We get yet another update on Mike McDaniel's job status, Pro Bowl nominations, and more here today on Locked On Dolphins.
You are Locked On Dolphins, your daily Miami Dolphins podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, Miami, welcome to another episode of Locked On Dolphins. It is your team every day here on the Locked On Network. I'm your host, Kyle Krabs, a lifelong Miami Dolphins fan, host of Locked On Dolphins, co-host of Locked On NFL Scouting, author of Touchdown Miami on Substack, NFL staff writer for A to Z Sports. Want to give a special welcome and shout out to our everydayers. It is your team every day. We don't just say it, we live it here on the Locked On Network. Special thank you to all of you who have helped to make Locked On the number one sports podcast network in the world. Today's episode of Locked On Dolphins is brought to you by FanDuel. If you're going to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com and place your NFL live bets all season long. Today on the show, it's been kind of a busy whirlwind the last 36 hours or so. It's about noon on Tuesday, but since the start of the day, Monday, you heard all weekend there was a big media push on the Dolphins are going to be moving on from Tua. They're expected he's played his last snap for the team. They're going to look to trade him, but they also cutting him's on the table. A lot of Tua separation news happening over the weekend. But that came with a qualifier of Mike McDaniel, barring a surprise, is expected to be back. And then the Dolphins get smoked on Sunday by the Bengals. And we got another update on the Pat McAfee show from Adam Schefter. And we're going to talk about that. And when the marquee guys on the beat start paying attention to conflicting reports, that's when it gets my attention. And that's what caught my attention was Barry Jackson of the Miami Herald, right? He's the best in the biz in the South Florida market. From an insider perspective, unquestioned, in my opinion, the cream of the crop. And he makes it a point to point out we have conflicting reports from Ian Rapoport and Adam Schefter. Barry had some things to say about who he felt more inclined to side with referring to who they might be hearing things from, but not outright saying who they might be hearing things from. The insider game is lovely. It's a mess. It's not for me, right? I would rather have my opinions, try to be educated, try to have well-rooted and well-intended opinions, get things right, get things wrong. It's part of the biz. But the Adam Schefter report, what caught me about what Schefter said wasn't necessarily what he said. And yeah, it was notable that he was in direct conflict with Ian Rapoport, but it was how he said it. He felt like he was my 5-year-old sass talking me when I told her it's time for a bath. And she told me she doesn't want to go up and get in the bath time. She was like, well, actually was kind of the tone. So let's start with what Schefter said on Pat McAfee. I have the quote. As for Mike McDaniel, I know people are saying that he's safe. And this is kind of where the sassiness comes out. I don't think they've made any decisions there yet about his future. He might be safe, but he might not. I think that is still playing out in real time and nothing has been decided there. And we'll see how that plays out over time. Nothing is decided there. ESPN's Adam Schefter on Mike McDaniel's job status with 2 weeks left in the 2025 season. Okay. Adam also did contribute to the Tua Tagovailoa reporting over the weekend, and he kind of echoed the sentiment of the Dolphins in all likelihood are going to move on in some way, shape, or form. And while Ian Rapoport said that paying down the salary and trading Tua was perhaps what Ian referred to as the most likely of outcomes, Schefter said, cutting him may be the most likely of outcomes. So they can't even see eye to eye on the Tua versus Tua exit transition that the team is reportedly intending on, while also acknowledging they don't have a GM that you would think is going to be a part of that process, but maybe in the feelers that they've worked through for the back channels and talking to the agents of the GMs to kind of get a gauge on whether or not they'd be interested and all that kind of the proactive groundwork that you can do in season that doesn't necessarily equate to interviews, but you can kind of gauge whether or not people are interested. Perhaps the consensus feedback there was all the executives that are coming in, they're going to intend to make that transition immediately. But Mike McDaniel, I think this is the proper frame of mind, assuming this is where the Dolphins are at. I think Mike has great run scheme design. I think he's a very sharp guy. I think he's a good human. But as far as the coaching direction of the team, and in particular, what I think Miami probably needs, I would love to see us not yo-yo back and forth and go to one end of the spectrum and then go to the other extreme end of the spectrum and just pinball back and forth on like disciplinarian coach, players coach, disciplinarian coach, players coach. Right? I think there's a middle ground. I think there's probably some subsections of head coaches that the Dolphins have not really explored that they probably should. Right? They've done every coach that Stephen Ross has hired. Right? Starting with when he was the majority, I think it was 2009 was when he purchased the majority ownership stake of the team. And Tony Sparano was already there. But Tony Sparano leaves, and Joe Philbin comes in, and it's off the Green Bay, kind of the flavor of the month offense across the NFL. Joe Philbin's the offensive coordinator there, didn't call plays there, but it was very bright, well-regarded offensive mind. Then they move on from Joe Philbin, and Adam Gase, who got the stamp of approval from Peyton Manning, maybe the easiest offensive coordinator job of all time is being Peyton Manning's offensive coordinator because of what he can do on the field as a coach on the field, gets your next hire. It was kind of the flavor of the month offensive coordinator. And then they go to Brian Flores, who was the other side of the coin, was much more disciplinarian the Patriot way, but really rooted in cutting edge genius intellect on the defensive side of the football. And that obviously didn't work out. And that did not work out just because of Tua Tagovailoa. That, it's Brian Flores' inability to put together a staff, I think, was on the offensive side of the football because the entire New England Patriots pipeline of offensive coaches was bottlenecked behind Josh McDaniels for like 20 years. So I thought, by the time you hit your third season and you've had Chan Gailey came in for 2020 and lasted a season, and we didn't work out with Jim Caldwell for more than a couple months before his 2019 season even started. And then we've got George Godsey and Eric Studesville as co-offensive coordinators, but Charlie Fry, was with Tua at Elite 11s calling the play. The offensive coaching staff was a mess. Right? All the offensive line coaches. So the Brian Flores issues expanded much further than just whether or not Brian Flores was right or not on Tua Tagovailoa. But then you go back to Mike McDaniel as cutting edge, very brilliant mind in his own right for play design. But they keep not touching on the head coaching element of the position. Like you could have watched Adam Gase for 5 seconds at that Jets introductory presser when he got fired from Miami and went right to New York to get a very clear idea. He was a little out there, right? A little out there. And then like Mike and Brian felt like they were polar opposite ends of the extreme spectrum. And Joe Philbin sitting there doing the tummy drums, talking to Chad Ochocinco when he's cutting him off the team. Leadership positions in the NFL are about a lot more than just the X's and O's element. And as I reflect on Mike McDaniel from an organization, from an administration, from a leadership perspective, that's where my questions still lie. So I, for one, am glad that we're going to allow these next 2 weeks to play out because I'm really interested to see how this does or does not snowball on Miami. And I think it has a chance to. And if it does, I think this decision is going to be rather easy relative to bringing back Mike or alternatively bringing everybody in all at the same time, organizationally being aligned with everybody being on the same timelines. So that's our update from Adam Schefter. Now, that's not the only news that we've got. The Pro Bowl rosters were announced, and I know Pro Bowls are not what they used to be. But we do need to give some flowers to one member of the Dolphins who made his first Pro Bowl. We need to talk about a few players that were left off the Pro Bowl. And who I'm mad about being omitted and who I'm not. That's next here on Locked On Dolphins. Make sure you guys stick with us. NFL Sundays move fast. One big play and everything feels different. That's what makes betting live with FanDuel so exciting. You're not just watching the game, you're reacting to it in real time. With FanDuel, you can place bets as the action unfolds. Every drive, every momentum swing, every highlight moment. Live betting is best when the game starts to shift, when a receiver gets hot, a defense tightens up, or the momentum flips after a turnover. FanDuel lets you jump in on the moment with live spreads and money lines that adjust instantly, player props that update as guys heat up. And you can bet next touchdown scores, drive results, totals, and more. It keeps you locked into every snap, every drive, every possibility. So if you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com. Place your NFL live bets all season long. FanDuel, the game moves fast, and so can you. Round of applause for Devon Achane, who was named to the preliminary Pro Bowl roster for the first time. He's fifth in the league in yards from scrimmage. He's on his third consecutive season with triple-digit touchdown or double-digit touchdowns. Triple-digit would be a heck of an accomplishment. But he's the only player on the Dolphins roster who was given a nod as a original selection for the Pro Bowl. There were 4 other players that the Dolphins have that were named as alternates. One player in particular, I think 2 players in particular really have right to be upset. But one of these players, it's going to cost him a lot more than his pride. So Achane makes the Pro Bowl, one of 3 backs plus a fullback. Alec Ingold is a first alternate at the fullback position. And Jordyn Brooks is a first alternate at off-ball linebacker. Jalen Waddle and Minkah Fitzpatrick, the other 2, they are third alternates at their respective positions. So those were the 5 players that got some level of recognition. Achane, Brooks, Ingold, Waddle, Fitzpatrick. Where is Aaron Brewer? I mean, I get like this is a Dolphins-centric show with a Dolphins focus, but you have former offensive linemen singing the praises of Aaron Brewer. You have one of the best offensive line minds in the football media industry in Brandon Thorne comparing him to Jason Kelce. And I would not go that far just for the sense that I recognize that I'm a Dolphins guy. And as a Dolphins guy, if I say Aaron Brewer is the closest thing we've seen to Jason Kelce since Jason Kelce, it will very easily get brushed off and dismissed as, well, he's just a Dolphins guy gassing up one of his guys. I get that. I think Aaron Brewer's been phenomenal. I want to make Aaron Brewer a lifetime Dolphin at this stage. If he wants to sign a 6-year contract, and players don't sign 6-year contracts because they want to get multiple bites at the apple, right? You know, the market resets fast enough that they like shorter contracts now. Lock him in. You could make an argument that Brewer should be the first move that a new general manager makes. You've got probably 3 players that are worth consideration for extensions that are on team economic friendly deals right now. 2 of them were snubbed from the Pro Bowl, the other one being Brooks, and Achane made the Pro Bowl, obviously. So not even an alternate recognition for Brewer. The 2 centers that make the Pro Bowl roster are Tyler Linderbaum and Creed Humphrey. Not too big of a surprise. Although the Creed's become a household name, generally accepted as the top center in football. Whereas Linderbaum is a first-round pedigree for a team that has historically been in the forefront of the conversation for postseason the last 3 years. They won double-digit games the last 3 years. So I get it. Like Aaron Brewer's undrafted, played in Tennessee, was not good in Tennessee, comes to Miami, is a phenomenal scheme fit. I would take Aaron Brewer's film over either of those other 2 names, but I get the Pro Bowl's kind of a popularity contest in some ways. A third of the vote is the fan vote. I don't expect fans that aren't Dolphins fans to not appreciate Aaron Brewer the way that they should until he gets the breakthrough and gets that first Pro Bowl honor. But Jordyn Brooks has a right to be pissed. he should be so mad that he didn't make it. And it's not just because, Jordyn Brooks leads the league in tackles. That is an impressive accomplishment with 2 games left to play. He is credited, according to Pro Football Reference, with 169 combined tackles. That's more than Zach Thomas ever had in a season, and Brooks has 2 games left to play. But the 2 who made it were Roquan Smith, again, a household name, was traded for a second-round pick from Chicago to Baltimore at the deadline a few years ago, was the difference-making player that was added to that 23 Ravens defense that was phenomenal. I get it. Azeez Al-Shaair from Houston was the other one, and he's playing linebacker and has made, I think he has 8 passes defensed and an interception, playing linebacker for the best defense in football this year, which is the Houston Texans. So I get why there's a visibility there. But Jordyn Brooks is a former first-round pick. I mean, Jordyn Brooks, you can compare the stats. And tackle numbers aren't everything, and I recognize the tackle numbers aren't everything. But Roquan Smith has 7 fewer tackles for loss, 3.5 fewer sacks, and 45 fewer tackles than Jordyn Brooks. And Al-Shaair has 11 fewer tackles for loss, 3.5 fewer sacks, the same number of fumble recoveries, and 73 fewer tackles than Jordyn Brooks does. But Jordyn Brooks plays for the Dolphins, but is a former first-round pick. And it's not even just like, hey, he really deserved this recognition and didn't get it. He had a $250,000 performance incentive in his contract. So Brooks is going to miss out on a very well-deserved $250,000 bonus because he was not named to the Pro Bowl in favor of guys that Brooks is doing laps on from a splash play production standpoint, with the exception of what Al-Shaair does in pass coverage. Because he's got to pick an 8 PBUs. And I think Brooks has 3 PBUs. So there's been a bigger splash in the pass game. So I'm bummed out for both of those guys. Like, I'm not going to sit here and make a case that, like, wow, Alec Ingold really got snubbed. I don't think you can make a case that Jalen Waddle was one of the top 4 wide receivers in football or in the AFC this year based off the production profile. I think the biggest discrepancy between production and actual skill set on this list is probably Jalen Waddle, because the offense has been through a straw for a lot of the year, and then now there's a quarterback change. I think you could cut on the film, and I can find you with a snap of a few fingers 500 passing yards that Jalen Waddle didn't get, in which he was wide open and had opportunities, but the ball wasn't where it needed to be. And Minkah, I think, has a pretty strong case. But I'm not going to go to war for Minkah Fitzpatrick as a Pro Bowl nod like I would for Jordyn Brooks and Aaron Brewer, who I think have been your 2 most consistent and best players on your football team. Achane's obviously in that list as well, and he got the recognition. And I'm happy for Devon Achane. We'll see what the Pro Bowl or what the All-Pro lists have to say. Would not be the first time. If one of those 2 made All-Pro, it would not be the first time in recent memory that a player made All-Pro but did not make the Pro Bowl. And if that's the case, I would like to think that maybe next year, if they give you similar performance, they would get the popularity vote that is the Pro Bowl too. One final thought today on the program. We're getting into that next here on Locked On Dolphins. Make sure you guys stick with us. Car shopping should feel exciting and not confusing. With Car Gurus, you can get the confidence that you deserve because they cut through all the noise, so you can actually see the best deals on the cars that you want, because when it comes to big purchases, you deserve the best of deals. Car Gurus makes the whole process simple and giving you real information, real deal ratings, and more listings than anyone else, so you could shop the way that you want. You could use Car Gurus deal ratings to compare cars quickly without having to guess whether or not the price is fair, and you'll love being able to filter by anything and everything. That's mileage, trim, features. So you only see cars that actually fit what you want and need. And there's verified dealerships and upfront pricing that makes the whole thing feel transparent and stress-free. Car Gurus gives you the trusted dealerships for a transparent and hassle-free buying experience. With over 4 million listings, it is the most of any major automotive marketplace online, and you'll always find the best deal. Shop the way you want with the tools, data, and unbiased dealings that make it easy. Buy or sell your next car. CarGurus.com. That's CARGURUS.com, cargurus.com. Final thought that I have is Mike McDaniel took to the podium yesterday and confirmed what everybody has had a sneaking suspicion on for a few weeks, which is that we will not see James Daniels again this season. This is a pretty tough one. I'm not going to lie. This is like $8.25 million. This was your one big signing in free agency. The Dolphins didn't really have an active free agency window. James Daniels had a very respectable rate and resume of availability prior to in 2024 when he tore his Achilles early in the year. He's still in his 20s. And James Daniels recovered very quickly. I mean, he the first week of training camp was like had all restrictions for snap or volume removed. I was good to go. He was a participant from the jump in training camp. He was good to go, full board, no questions asked, full steam ahead. And then the first series of the season happened, and a totally unrelated injury caught James Daniels. And at the time, it was reported that it will be a couple weeks for James Daniels, and then we'll see him again. He'll be back. He played 3 snaps this season. 3 snaps. And if you're hurt, you're hurt. Like, there's not a lot you can do about it, but that doesn't make it any less of a bad signing for the optics of what the Dolphins had to work with budget this year. They really had 2 meaningful two contracts that I think surpassed $3.5 million on the free agent market. And both of them were not good for Miami. James Daniels being one. He got $8.25 million in cash this season for 3 snaps. And then Zach Wilson was the other one, who the team signed to a 1-year contract, $6 million base value with incentives that got up to 10. And Zach got passed by Quinn Ewers in week 16 for the starting job when the $55 million quarterback got benched. I mean, those 2 guys, they got $14 million in cash this year, and they didn't even give you 30 snaps. So when you want to talk about opportunity cost and you want to talk about return on investment and you want to talk about how and where this team gets back on track, right? Tyreek Hill got $30 million, $28 million, and he played in 3.5 games. You can't control when you get hurt. But the Dolphins had too many players that were getting compensation that weren't on the field. Well, now Tyreek's due $36 million next year. Take that 36, pull it back. Unfortunately, Tua Tagovailoa, it sounds like the team's going to move on. He's going to get $54 million minus whatever minimum salary contract he signs somewhere else if he gets cut, or maybe a little bit more than that if you're able to eat most of the contract and then trade him after June 1st. Those are really your options. And from a cash perspective, we're talking $14.26 million for 26 snaps. Never mind the thing that the team didn't sign sign a backup quarterback for the year before was because they wanted to preserve their compensatory picks with Robert Hunt and Christian Wilkins leaving in free agency, and they actually needed the backup quarterback. Well, you got 26 snaps for $14.25 million from these 2 guys, and they're going to cost you 2 compensatory picks along the way. So it's like a double whammy. And you can't predict it. You would never in a million years guess, hey, this guy's going to go down with a peck in the first possession of the season, and we're not going to see him again all year. But when it plays out like that, and you sit here and you look back at it, yikes. For a team that did not have money to spend, the money that they spent, I mean, Matt Judon got a 1-year, $3 million contract. He got cut. You could stack it up. Nick Westbrook Achane got 2 years for $6 million total value contract. He's a healthy scratch because they're protecting the Holland comp pick at this point. For as good as free agency was in 2024, when you had Jordyn Brooks on a 3-year deal, you had Aaron Brewer on a 3-year deal. I think those are 2 of your 3 best players this year. Jonnu Smith, who made the Pro Bowl last year, caught 80-something balls and almost 1,000 yards, right? Like, you had a phenomenal free agent group in 2024. Calais Campbell was on a 1-year deal. For as good as it was in 24, it was that bad. Not quite that bad, but it was pretty bad in 25. And when you are boxed and when you paint yourself into a corner with your cash spending and doubling and tripling down on contracts that don't need reworking, you can't afford to have a free agency class like this. You just can't. And unfortunately, that's what the Dolphins got. So we're sitting here now. We're talking about the right side of the offensive line with question marks, and Tua gets benched, and Zach Wilson was the explicitly targeted reclamation project with some tools that we really like. And then we're going to sit down Tua and do so not for Zach Wilson, but for Quinn Ewers instead. And I get you sign Zach Wilson, you don't know you're going to get Quinn Ewers in the draft. So I want to be fair, right? We want to be angry, but we want to be angry at the right things, and we want to be fair. So you don't know you're going to get Ewers when you sign Zach Wilson, and I get that. But you look back at this free agency crop, and especially the 2 contracts that they actually ponied up for, you got nothing. And that's why we're going through a football operational change. Well, maybe not explicitly why, but that when you do the ledger of the pros and the cons and you do the tally, you have this on the mark here for navigating, operating on a budget. It's not going to reflect very well. That's going to do it for us here today on Locked On Dolphins. It is your team every day. Appreciate you guys as always for checking out the show. Make it a great rest of your Tuesday. We'll be back again tomorrow to get you another step closer to the weekend and week 17. Hope to see you then. Go Fins.